this is the 100th episode. We'll get into that. Welcome to the Truth About Real Estate Investing Show. My name is Erwin Cito, bringing you the truth about real estate, because I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't. So let's start off with, what does work-life balance mean to you? I make it no secret that I take Sundays off, as Sunday is recovery from Raptors Game 6 series clincher, and Sunday is also family day. For all you entrepreneurs out there seeking balance, I have no idea what balance is. What I do know is that no one likes working on Sundays, so it's a good day to take off. Understand though, I've been a young hustler for well over a decade, building my business and my investments, and they now continue to work for me on Sundays and statutory holidays, so I don't always have to work. If I need to check on a property on a Sunday or a stat holiday, I'll bring my kids with me as it's part of their education and inheritance. They gotta start earning their keep. I don't care if they're 3 and 5 years old. Going to school will get them a job. Learning to invest in real estate lets them level up. They'll be able to turn down those promotions for little added pay, more responsibility, and even worse, more hours. It all comes down to hourly rate. That's actually a metric that I think a lot of people overlook. What is your hourly rate? And then when you look at taking on more work, as in a promotion or a side hustle, what is the hourly rate of that? I actually remember when during the hockey strike, this is years ago, I was doing some online poker as a side hustle. You can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes. Side hustle, online poker. And it was causing me a lot of stress, but I was making about $8 an hour. Was that worth it? I soon quit. Call me a quitter if you want. Anyways, so what's worse than accepting work for a lower hourly rate than what you're worth? Because instead of doing that low pay work, my kids can spend more time with my grandchildren. I'm a bit messed up in that I look up that far out. But to me, that's balance in the definition of wealth. When my kids look back, other than thinking of me as a wildly embarrassing dad by my antics and silliness, I hope they remember that they were always a priority for me. In case you missed it, this is related to, of course, the iWin Wealth Hacker Conference, November 9th. We identified the speaker in the original brainstorming session for whatever event we were going to put on, which eventually snowballed into a 2,000 plus person event. Anyways, we identified the speaker as the top educator in the area of multifamily investing, which would be 5 units and above. So apartment buildings, essentially. His name is Pierre-Paul Turgeon. He is Canada's leading authority and insider when it comes to investing in apartment buildings, because he has a unique investment perspective. He is the former CMHC, a multifamily underwriter, as in he was the guy that analyzed all the risks for multifamily. And also in another position within CMHC, he was analyzing what went wrong with deals that didn't go well as CMHC. And his portfolio is over 160 doors and valued in excess of $22 million. He is the best educator I've ever seen on the subject of multifamily investing. Hence, we have him for iWin's Wealth Hacker Conference, November 9th. If you want to register to either get tickets or get on the waiting list to get early bird tickets and early access to tickets, the URL is www.wealthhacker.ca. On to this week's show. Before I introduce this week's guest, we just passed... Well, actually, no, this is the 100th episode, which is crazy. This is the 100th episode of a 6-episode experiment. If for anyone who's interested in starting podcasting or any sort of venture in general, start small, set a goal, get it done. Mine was to have 6 episodes and then launch this podcast. I remember it's almost 3.5 years ago now. I was a nervous wreck with nonsensical questions from my guests. I always remember asking Julie Broad if she drank coffee or tea. Her response was, do people really want to know this? As time went on, it's now been 3.5 years. It's insane to me how much a niche Canadian content-only podcast has made the top 60 of all of iTunes in the investment category. So that's international. That's not just Canada. And we only focus on a small segment of real estate just for Canadians. Insane. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to all my listeners, my guests, especially my favorite guests, many of you who've dropped bombs on this podcast, sharing publicly for the first time. One of our guests was kicked out of their home for substance abuse as a young teenager and lived on the streets, only to later turn it around as an adult. And now they're super successful and rich. That's Tony Miller, Mr. Ottawa. Another lost her parents as a young teen and became homeless, only to later on become one of the top coaches in any industry. She is one of the top coaches in our industry, let alone any industry, and she's now quite wealthy and successful. I love all the stories about how on the show, many have shared how they overcame overwhelming odds. Tahani Abruna, she was born in a refugee camp, came to Canada for an arranged marriage, only to become a single mom, and then she had to go earn a living while barely speaking English. And now she's gone on to be one of the most wealthiest people I know, one of the wealthiest women I know, one of the wealthiest people I know, period. Jules McKenzie, who refers to himself as an Indian. That's his words, not mine. Indigenous Canadian was the politically correct term that I use. He was born and raised on a reserve. He was told he was worthless by his teachers, then to go on having the challenging job of being a police officer on the reserve. Many dark days ensued, failed investments, only to be able to turn it around later and become quite wealthy. And he's also one of the happiest people. If you ever met him, you would have no idea what he's gone through. And he's one of the happiest people with the brightest smiles. To celebrate 100 episodes, I reached out to several of our most popular guests for updates, plus for fun, a few Centurion investors. Centurion investor would be someone who's done 100 or more properties. So we can learn from their lessons. So we may too learn to invest like the best of the best. Before I get into the guest, let me state that this podcast isn't only for helping like the super elite investor. If you only pay off your home, just think of that. Okay, for anyone who's listening to this show who pays rent or pays a mortgage on their own home, think about how much further you would be if you could live rent or mortgage free. So you just have one free and clear property. That is massive. If nothing else, I would love for all of you to have that and then be able to pass it on to the next generation. Anyways, so this week's guest. First guest of our celebrating 100 episodes is my friend, John Roumanis. He's an old friend of mine who owns lots of properties now, but he also has the honor of being our most downloaded podcast in our show history. John is very well educated. He has his MBA. He has a CPA. He even teaches people at a local college for fun. It's not about the money. Purely does this purely for enjoyment. He manages tons of people at work at Canada's largest coffee producer. He's really smart too, as he's a conservative stock investor. So we talk stocks on this episode, and he does largely value plays for blue chip companies that pay dividends. He's also really smart for having chosen to work with myself and my team on his real estate. That's helped to make him over $1 million, all part-time in under 8 years. If you want to help building your portfolio, growing a real estate portfolio, let us know. And without further ado, I give you John Roumanis.
So education is important, but I think that there's a healthy combination of formal education and what you learn on the streets. And I was half facetious when I was saying that one of the best educations or one of the best lessons I ever had was in a cafe, Williams Cafe in Burlington. I'm pretty sure it was Burlington, if I remember correctly, at Brandon QEW when you and I first met to talk about real estate. I had met you at a rain event, and you were wearing the leather jacket that said Mr. Hamilton on the back. And I thought to myself, there's a guy who I want to partner with. And you and I met at that cafe. And I remember you were saying to me, you were trying to understand what my goals are, what my aspirations were. And I think I basically said to you, when it came to real estate, Erwin, all I wanted to do was just buy that first house. I had no grand visions. I had no dreams. I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I wanted that first house, and I kind of figured out after that. Best education you can get. Sometimes you just got to jump in with both feet, right?
So I've been messing around with their storytelling on the show.
You've been messing around with the storytelling on the show? Do tell.
So now I'm going to ask you, what's life like now?
What's life like now? So I would say busy and successful at the same time. So got a little boy at home, 2 years old. Got another one on the way.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. It's exciting, but being a father yourself, 2 kids, I can only imagine the chaos that's going to happen when I have 2 boys running around instead of just one. Work, busy, love my job, but it's very, very busy. And I was telling you earlier, it's quite stressful, but in a good way. It's been an incredible education in and of itself. And the real estate thing is going very well. I'm really excited because I'm looking forward to talking about. So the last time I did a presentation at one of your events, I kind of talked about this idea of having a vision and then putting clear plans and timelines against a vision in order to bring it to life. And I'd like to bring you up to speed with some of the stuff that I've done against that vision and against those plans, because there's been a tremendous amount of work and success that I've seen in the last probably year and a half with regards to real estate.
What's been the catalyst for the improvements?
So I will give all that credit to my wife, Frida.
Okay. Who has very limited investment experience.
Yeah, you know what? But she is, as an outsider and someone with someone who's a very intelligent person.
She's a lawyer, for anyone who doesn't know.
Yep, she is a lawyer, and a good one. I remember sitting.
Let's give her a full shout out. What kind of business is she in?
She's in personal injury. Yeah, Frida Vanopoulos, a personal injury lawyer. If you're looking for a great personal injury lawyer, reach out to Verk Law or Frida Vanopoulos directly on LinkedIn or look her up online. They're a great law firm. It's a couple of women who are looking for to help people who have been wrongly treated by insurance companies. And if you get into a slip and fall or some sort of a motor vehicle accident, and you're looking for somebody to represent you, they do great work. If we're going to take an aside here for a second, personal injury lawyers are often kind of ridiculed. They're called ambulance chasers. They're
Better Call Saul.
Yeah, you kind of think of the Better Call Saul, and hey, listen, like in any profession, there's good and there's bad, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of personal injury lawyers have been unfairly treated. I see the work that my wife does. I know the kinds of cases, and obviously within confidentiality, she tells me sort of the kinds of cases that they turn away because it smells fishy. They really want to take on those cases where, hey, someone who has been working hard gets into some sort of an accident or gets into some sort of trouble, and then basically doesn't get the kind of care that they expect from their provider.
More like Aaron Brockovich.
More like Aaron Brockovich, less like Better Call Saul. I think that's a perfect example. So yeah, Frida, to her credit, is a pretty level thinker. And just to get back to what we were saying earlier, we're sitting on the couch one day, and I said, I think I'm ready for another property. She goes, okay, that sounds good, but how is the cash flow of your existing properties going? And I said, well, I'm not really cash flowing. She goes, fine. So why don't you fix that first? Create your own little, you've got this great little business that's not really, it's growing. It's the value of the houses is going up. Someone else is paying your mortgages. But what about the cash flow part of it? Don't you want it to kind of pay for itself? And I thought to myself, okay, that's a great point. And that was the catalyst I needed to say, I'm going to take my portfolio of properties and I'm going to find a way with every one of these properties to increase the cash flow. And I came up with a goal, and I called it Vision 2020. And that vision is to say, I want my properties to cash flow $20,000 annually by January 1st, 2020, hence the 2020, right? And from there, once I kind of had this vision in place, I was able to go back and say, well, what's it going to take on my properties in order to do that? And that's what I want to kind of spend a little bit of time talking to you about right now. So I've got 5 properties outside of my own personal property. I have 2 single-family houses in Hamilton, a duplex in Hamilton, a triplex in Hamilton, and I've got a student rental in Welland. Right. And with each one of these, my friend, there's an opportunity to drive incremental cash flow. The first one was the student rental. I had a student rental in Hamilton that we've converted into a duplex. And let me be the first to say, with student rentals, they're great if you are willing to accept a certain level of problems, depending on the school and depending on the property management. Mm-hmm.
And the school dictates the tenant profile as well.
The school will dictate the tenant profile, because I have a student rental in Welland at Niagara College. Love it. Mm-hmm. It's been wonderful. I mean, there's been ups and downs, but holistically, it has been absolutely wonderful, and I'm thrilled about it. Mm-hmm. But the one in Hamilton near Mohawk College was not what I would call success. We had a number of issues. Low rent, and with student rentals, you are paying all the expenses, right? We had delinquencies. We had problems with the students. We had problems with the house. When I say we, my business partner and I knew that the ultimate goal for this property was to turn it into a duplex. And last year, we decided that finally we were ready to do this. And the thing about duplexes, and you know this with real estate, you don't want to be using your own money. You want to be able to refinance a property to get the money out, right? So with this property up on the mountain, it was funny, Erwin. And I don't know if you remember the frantic phone calls I was making to you about some of the stress involved with this. But so we started the refinancing process, and basically we went to the bank and said, we've got this property, it's gone up in value, this student rental. We want to convert it to a duplex. They go, okay. And I remember, I was working with my mortgage agent, and he said, wow, no problem. We're going to get you like $120,000 to do this renovation. Yeah. And I was like, this is great. $120,000. Awesome. Great rate, great amount of money. And we had priced it out, and it was going to be less than $120,000. So we were excited about getting, the prospect of getting a little bit of money out of the property to do it, to work on some other stuff. And I remember that it had gone from my mortgage broker to the branch, and I'm not going to name names because we're going to protect the innocent here, but I had gone to the branch, and the branch said to me, we don't think we can get you to 120. It might be only 100. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's not ideal, but okay. And it was a bit of a nightmare because it kind of bounced from person to person to person to the point, Erwin, where I've already started construction on this property. Like, we've kicked the students out, or not, I shouldn't say kick them out. We actually just didn't bother renewing their leases.
And you didn't fill it with new tenants.
And we didn't fill it with new tenants. We started doing the work. And then it got to the point where the bank calls me one day. They're like, yeah, we're not sure we can do this deal at all. So I went from, being told it was going to be $120,000 to suddenly we may not be able to do anything at all. So I'm sitting there going, what am I supposed to do with this? This is catastrophic. But anyway, I will tell you that sometimes...
These are investor problems.
These are first world problems, huh? Like
top 1% problems.
Top 1% problems. But the point is, it ended up working out. And actually, it was your recommendation. You helped me with this, Erwin, because I remember I called you one day and I said, "What am I going to do with this?" And you had said something about calling the ombudsman at the bank. Yeah, and that's what I did. And it was resolved, and I ended up getting $100,000. So it wasn't the full amount, but yeah, so right from the beginning, we've had this great relationship for 7 or 8 years now, and even as recently as last year, it was you who helped me get that money. You gave me a solution that said, talk to the ombudsman. There's no reason you should not get this money. Like, this property is a fantastic property. Yeah. So,
and you're being jerked around.
I was being really jerked around.
I think more and more, I just think people are overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, and so you were slipping between the cracks.
Yeah. Yes, I absolutely was.
Until you make a loud enough noise that people pay attention to you.
And I guess what sucks is that I'm a very caring landlord. I love my tenants. I love my business, and I want partners that share in that love, right? But ultimately, the duplex was done, and the property has been a dream. We've got some wonderful people living upstairs. The rent has gone up by about $700 or $800 a month, and the costs have gone down a few $100s. So, you do the math. You take a property that was barely cash flowing before and is now bringing in probably about $800 a month in cash per month. Talk about a complete turn of fortune on a property, right? Mm-hmm. So while we were doing that property, there was another one that came up. So I have a triplex downtown. And I got to tell you, I remember this triplex, Erwin. It came up for sale for $295,000 in the St. Clair neighborhood of Hamilton. Beautiful house, 90 Myrtle Avenue. Great, older neighborhood, view of the mountain, right downtown, a few blocks away from Main Street. Came up for $295, and I'm like, this is too good to be true. It's a legal, non-conforming triplex. How many of these do you find? So I scooped it up nice and quick. We had the tenant on the second floor vacate. This was an incredible story. So last July, again, in the spirit of trying to drive incremental cash flow, we, the tenant vacated and they were paying $950 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. Fathom that for a second. $950 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Hamilton. We knew that this place was worth at least, $1450 a month easily. So we vacated the apartment, and the first thing we had to do is go in and clean. And I remember walking in and saying, my God, there must have been an average of about half a foot of garbage strewn throughout the entire property. I think we spent something like $3,000 just in disposal fees. That's how bad that was. So we started doing the work, and the idea was we were going to take this second floor apartment and renovate it. And I knew, based on what the market rates were at the time, that this bad boy was going to bring in probably about $1,400 of rent per month. So think about that for a second. You're going from $950 to $1,400. And I got a funny story for you. I said, God bless my property manager. God bless my wonderful contractor. I said to them, I go, guys, we need to get a lock on the front door, because what had happened was the tenant, for some reason, had broken the front door lock. I said, we need to get a lock on the front door. We need to get a lock on the front door. We need to get a lock on the front door. I get a call one Saturday. I'm at an appliance shop looking for appliances for this property. And I get a call. I said, John, got a problem at the property. What's the problem, Mr. Contractor? Yeah, somebody broke in and broke the piping in that unit. Like, they kicked out the piping and the water was running. And thankfully, I came back and I turned off the water in the house. And I remember saying to my friend, the property manager, why did we not put a lock on the door? Now, to this day, we don't know who it was. It could have been the former owner who had come by and maybe the former tenant, who had come by and wanted some revenge. It could have been, some sort of local person who was anti-gentrification or anti-renovation or whatever it was. But thankfully, my contractor had actually come back for some unrelated reason to pick up a tool or something that he had forgotten, and actually had found that in the unit, the water was running freely. It actually caused damage to the first floor's ceiling, and we had to fix that. And there was all sorts of problems. But in the end, I'm happy to say we got the unit completely renovated, and we got $450 more of cash per month. So this has been the last year of my life, Erwin, has really been spending time saying, I've got this great portfolio of properties. How do I get the most out of it? Get the wheels of cash kind of greasing my pocket before I make another investment. It's been a wild ride between, fighting with banks, figuring out who's been, kicking down doors and running water in my bare kitchen, and all sorts of other adventures. But I got to tell you, every minute of it, as frustrating or as annoying as it's been completely worth it. Because I got to tell you, that 90 Myrtle property, it went again, no cash flow to suddenly now cash flowing thousands of dollars a year. All the difference in the world. Yeah.
What about the main floor tenant?
What about the main floor tenant?
I should not be talking about that one.
Are they still there?
Here's the thing. I inherited the main floor tenant and I inherited the third floor tenant. They pay their rent on time every single month.
Yeah, worst problems they have, yeah.
And even though they are paying significantly under market, as a good landlord, they're paying on time. They're not causing problems.
Right.
I have to respect that, right?
Oh, I can't believe they're still there. Especially the main floor, because she broke up with her boyfriend when we were doing the middle of the transaction, I believe.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? And you know as well as I do, because we have rent control, there's only so much you can take up rents. And people who are locked into a good rate, they know that if they leave, listen, you're not getting a 1-bedroom apartment in Hamilton downtown for less than $1,000 unless it's a slum. And I don't operate slums. So what's her incentive to leave? And at the end of the day, look, I mean, she's paying on time and that's that. But I mean, this whole idea of rent control, I got to tell you, it's really, really frustrating, right? I mean, I know that I guess the last provincial government introduced it. And they only introduced it, I think, on buildings that were 1995 or newer, because rent control did exist on older buildings, but on newer buildings, it did not exist. I got to tell you, like, it's a complete disincentivizer. Like I think landlords have a very ill-deserved bad reputation, right? You're always going to have your bad apples. You're always going to have the people who don't do good work. But I would like to think, Erwin, that the vast majority of us actually care about running our businesses in an ethical and customer-friendly manner. And sometimes when you want to run your business in an ethical and customer-friendly manner, you need to incur costs, and you need to pass those costs on to your tenants.
Yeah.
I don't have any other recourse. I can't renegotiate my gas fees. I can't renegotiate my electricity fees. I can't renegotiate my city taxes. I can't negotiate these. But if I can't pass on my expenses to my tenants, then why would I ever want to buy more properties?
Right.
And if I can't buy more properties, then how are we going to provide safe, clean, and customer-friendly accommodations to people who are looking to rent properties? Right? So
to continue with that, if you can't recoup your costs, you'll likely sell.
Exactly.
And then someone's going to move in and evict the tenants that way.
Right.
And then the rental supply is gone.
And how does that benefit anybody? So,
you know who it benefits? The people that currently are renting.
Well, it benefits the people who are currently renting. So you kind of get this, like,
as long as they don't move.
Well, right. So you get this. But you get this crop of people who are now grandfathered into these, absurdly low rates. And hey, listen, I mean, good for them. But at the same time, the opportunity cost is that landlords aren't out there buying more properties. So what happens to the people who need to rent today? They're competing for a much smaller number of units. And those people who are out there competing are probably going to be younger families who are trying to, start out in life, and they need a place to rent. And they're the ones who are bearing the burdens of people who are grandfathered into these super low, artificially low rents. And I'm not saying that I'm going to walk into someone's life and say, you're paying $800 and now you're going to pay $1,500. Just because that's where the market is. And listen, I have examples of properties and I have examples of units where I am at least $300 or $400 under market because I've had tenants who have been there so long that there's no way that the 1 or 2% the government allows me to take up every year is going to offset that, right? But it's incredible, the myopia that our provincial governments have exhibited in enacting these rent controls, right? It's completely ridiculous. I'm completely against that.
Well, I believe they knew what they were doing. It was just to win votes.
It's funny because a left-leaning government,
which is usually trying to help, their usually policy is to benefit all. They pass legislation to only benefit those who are currently renting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then those people voted for it, who are voting for a left-leaning party, But basically you're saying screw everybody else.
Yeah.
My rent doesn't change.
Yeah.
I don't care about what happens going forward for anyone else.
Completely unfair, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I kind of get it, but it's not reality. If I've worked in a multitude of corporate jobs, and when costs increase, prices go up, right? I mean, ultimately, it's the end user who ends up paying for them. Mm-hmm. Why is it any different in rent? I just don't understand the concept, right? So anyway.
And then bring it to another real estate example is insurance is a real problem right now. Anyone who's been following headlines, the floods and stuff that's going on. So people are making claims. Insurance money's are losing money.
Yeah.
As I was talking to my insurance guy just 2 weeks ago, and he was actually telling me how a couple of insurance companies got out of the business.
Yeah.
Because they can't recoup the money.
Absolutely.
They're losing too much money and have gotten out of business. And what do you think happens with costs?
Oh, costs go up because now you have less competition, right?
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, it's funny that you mentioned floods. Can I please tell you how wonderful sump pumps and interior waterproofing are? This is landlord life, right? Yeah. This is landlord life.
That reminds me. I need a backup sump pump.
Okay, so the property on the mountain I had, anyways. So my property at home, actually where I live right now, when we moved in, we had a number of water issues, and I would recommend that if you are looking at a property that is below the escarpment, whether it's in Burlington, Hamilton, make sure you invest in a sump pump and a sump well, because that groundwater, as it runs down the escarpment and down into the city, you run the risk of floods. So you're talking about flooding, right? Why do you want to deal with higher premiums? Why do you want to deal with insurance companies when for a few $1,000 you can have something that's in the house that's running and takes care of the water problems?
Did you have that when you bought your house?
When I bought my current property where I live?
Was it already there? Yeah.
No.
Or you put it in?
No, we put it in. So what ended up happening was we had noticed that there was a bit of some water damage to the laminate flooring in the basement. And if I remember correctly, the previous owner said, "Oh, we had a washer leak. The washer leaked." And we found out not pretty quickly, but over the next year or two that the basement holistically had water issues. Now, here's the nice thing about, the thing about Burlington is a beautiful city. Love Burlington. It's an absolute paradise to live in. Problem with Burlington is because you're below the escarpment, the soil is clay. And with clay soil, it's like your house is sitting on a bowl. So as the water accumulates under the house, it has no drainage. It has only one place to go, and that's up. Your concrete gets saturated, then the water starts flowing in from up under the concrete. And we had this problem. And how do I know this? I mean, we actually had to end up tearing up our basement. We got rid of all the floors. We opened up the walls. We put in the membrane, did all the interior waterproofing, dug up the floors, and we put in a sump pump. And I got to tell you, Erwin, my sump pump's probably running right now in spring once every 30 to 45 minutes. It's draining all that groundwater that's been coming up from underneath the earth. And I laugh to myself when people go and spend time and energy to do a second unit in the basement, and they're opening walls and they're opening up the floor. Spend the $10,000 to do the interior waterproofing. Get the sump pump put in. It is the best investment you can make, because that I promise you will not worry about water again for the next 20 or 30 years. Let it rain as much as it wants. Let that groundwater, let the water table rise as much as it's going to, and that sump pump will take care of it. Landlord life, when my partner and I renovated that student rental I was talking about earlier up on the mountain, you know how it is, right? You say, oh, it's going to be X amount of money. And then as soon as they open the walls, what do you find? Mold. What does mold mean? Water leaks. When you have water leaks, what do you have to assume? Foundational issues. When you have foundational issues, you need interior waterproofing. So, anytime I'm doing any sort of major renovation, I am always, without question, insisting on interior waterproofing and sump pumps. The other reality, regardless of where you live, is that climate change is happening, right? And with climate change, there's two things that are fundamental that people in Ontario need to understand. Number one, the regions of the world that are dry are going to get drier. So the deserts will become more desertified, desertification. I don't know what the proper word is.
Yeah.
And the regions of the world that are wet are going to get wetter. And Ontario and the GTA is a relatively wet part of the world. That only means that you're going to get more wind, you're going to get more rain, and you're going to get periods of heavy concentrated rain where there isn't enough time for the water to drain. So if you're a landlord and you have the opportunity to open up your floors and you're doing a second unit or whatever it is in the basement, at least investigate the idea of interior waterproofing. It is the greatest thing you're going to do. $10,000 over 20 years. Who cares? It's $500 a year on average. If you amortize it over 20 years, and if you save yourself that one flood, it will have been well worth the money spent. And that is all I have to say about that.
And I always have to give some context or give warnings. We're not saying this is man-made climate change necessarily.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that.
We're just saying the world is warming.
Yeah.
And weather's effed.
Yeah. The world is changing. I am not a scientist. I don't think you're a scientist either. The reality is, there's been some crazy windstorms. I can't believe the amount of windstorms we've had. And I don't know if that's a Burlington, Hamilton thing, because I've lived here now for, I guess, about 4 years. But I'll tell you,
the weather in general is more extreme.
Weather in general is more extreme. So as landlords, we have to reconcile that fact, right? Mm-hmm. That means interior waterproofing. It means stronger fences. It means ensuring that your roof is in good shape. That's another thing. I got to tell you. So if we continue to talk about this concept of improving cash flow, if I go back to the very first property that you and I bought, 28 Venio Lane.
Mm-hmm. What year was that? Remind us.
2011, I believe, Erwin. Yeah, it's been almost 8 years since I've owned it.
What'd you buy it for? What'd you pay for?
$233,500, I believe. $233,500 or $234,500.
What did you rent it for?
It was renting for $1,623.
When you first got it?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. When I first got it, it was like $1,400 or $1,500. This is another one of these properties where I am embarrassed to say that I have not done a great job managing the rent. There's a great story around this. We're actually in the midst of renovating this property right now as we speak. Yeah. The expectation is I'm probably going to get $1,900 to $1,950 a month for this.
There's no single families available. So
exactly.
There's nothing because everyone's duplexing.
Everyone's duplexing, but this is a semi-detached townhouse. I have no choice but to rent it out as a single family.
No. It's just that you are.
Yeah.
There's nothing available.
Well, I was renting it for $1,623, and I've been told $1,900 to $1,950. So it's at least $300 a month in cash that's going to come my way.
Just for fun, why don't you throw it up for an extra $100?
Yeah. You know what? We haven't started advertising it because it's under renovation. But just if we take an aside, because I want to talk about.
You had a story around this.
No. Before we even get there, though, if we want to talk about success, I bought this property for $234,000. The beauty of
the first time we looked at properties too
is it was the first day you and I went out. It was a Saturday. It was the very first property I saw. We went out to a few others, and I said, "Hey, Erwin, I like that first place. Let's go back there." And that's the one I bought, and it's been with me since then. One of my neighbors recently sold for $540,000.
You usually update me when something sells. You didn't update me about that one.
You know what? It's been such a tear in Hamilton that it's $540,000. And I got to tell you, you know how much work I've done on this place since I bought it? I changed some carpeting to laminate flooring. And I think I painted the main floor, and I may have repaired the roof once or twice. And I think I replaced the furnace.
I remember you called me within the first week. You had to snake the drain because they were pouring fat down the drain.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Wow, I can't believe. How did you remember that?
I remember things.
Oh my goodness! When you think about that, right? This was 2011 when people were saying, "Oh my God, housing prices it's so expensive. Where are housing prices going to go?" Fast forward to 2019, $234,000. I put $50,000 down. Place is worth $540,000.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That is a 10x because I only put $50,000 down. That's my own money. Everything else since then is. The tenants are paying it down. That's a 10x in 10 years. How many investments outside of a Google or an Amazon or a Facebook do you know that's delivered 10x in 10 years?
I don't know. You're the stock guy in my group of friends.
Yeah, exactly. Not too many, right? So, but this property is overdue for some love. So this is the 1 year where I'm investing a little bit of money in it. It needed a new roof after probably about 25 years of existence, and that's fair.
Good.
And we're doing a complete facelift on the inside. Quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, replacing carpet with laminate, full paint, replacing broken toilets. So it's going to be really, really when I go in there and renovate, I like to do things right. And we're going to put it out there and make some good cash flow. I'm super excited about this property.
Is Cornerstone doing the renovation for you?
This time around, yeah. Contractors, Erwin, that's a whole conversation in and of itself. I mean, what kind of luck have you had with contractors? Like, I'm finding that it's either they want to come in and do the job one day and make a fat wad of cash, or they're not willing to do anything for less than a 6-figure job. Like, in between there, it's not easy finding people to do the work.
No, it's not easy. That's why most investors and people who've been on the show, they have their own crews.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's part of I don't know what happened. One of the problems is we're in the middle of a construction boom.
Yeah.
So anyone who can swing a hammer can get a job, basically.
Yeah. It's incredible. Like, I think I mentioned that I was having our own bathroom at home renovated. I was talking to you a little bit earlier about that. Mm-hmm. And the contractor who I hired is a wonderful human being. And he quoted me a rate, and he says, listen, John, he goes, I'm going to give you this rate because you're a customer of mine. Mm-hmm. But, I could probably get double this and still not be able to meet all the demand. And I said, this guy's fantastic. He's an incredible contractor. And it's just when you have someone good, you got to stick with them. And it's funny because you're paying them, but I got to tell you, you got to make sure that they're happy, that you're treating them right, that you're paying them right, because there's a lot of competition for that work out there. I've dealt with a plethora of not great contractors or not great tradespeople, and everything from your furnace guy to general contractors to fence builders. There's a lot of mediocrity out there, I guess, right? I mean, I'm willing to pay for it. It's hard to find good labor. It's hard to find good help, right? People aren't going into the trades the way they used to. I'd almost want to tell young people, if they're out there listening, it's like, man, buy properties and go into the trades, because nobody is doing that. Nobody's going out into the trades. And if you can do your own repairs around the house, and if you can, contract yourself out while you're getting someone to rent your place and pay down your mortgages, if you can contract yourself out, you can make some good cash, right?
I mean, tell young people who especially enjoy it, that should be a skill they should have.
Absolutely.
If they want to be a real estate investor as well. Yeah. Because on this show, we have Brady McDonald and Steve Kulikowski. They all started that path. Yeah. Where they renovated their own properties with their own hands.
Yeah.
And now they're up to much bigger things.
Well, absolutely, right? I mean, I'm not handy in any way, shape, or form. I'll be very honest with you. I even have someone come and mow my lawn once a week, for God's sake. But for those who have that skill, I mean, it's a gold mine. I don't think people realize that. Like, no, they don't. A good trade person, a good general tradesperson, and Erwin, call bullshit on this if I'm lying, could probably command $80 to $100 an hour for their labor rate.
It depends what. But for example, my general contractor, just his most recent hire is $45 an hour.
Yeah.
So it's not the old days of $15 to $25 as people were considering.
Yeah.
But if you're in the right place,
yeah.
Like if you're like a high-end carpenter, easy, $80 to $100 an hour.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about, let's say you're doing like a bathroom reno, for example, where that is not, it's not cheap. I'm not talking about, cutting wood outside and, laying down some flooring or whatever. I'm talking about like somebody who can come in, do plumbing, do basic electrical, do some lighting, install a bath. There's skill involved in that, right?
Yeah, we used to pay like $35,000, $45,000 for a basement conversion done.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at like 70 to 100.
Yeah.
And it's not just all labor. Materials have gone up too.
Yeah, of course, right? But I mean, all that said, right? If I'm listening to this podcast right now, I'm sitting there going, if I'm a new real estate investor, or I'm somebody who's just getting into it for the first time or contemplating it.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording.
Yeah,
let's get into it.
There's
highly controversial.
And you're a teacher too.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, Erwin, there's a great quote I read the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I love this quote, and I would want everybody to remember this. You write it down, wake up every day and remember this. It's a Chinese proverb, and the Chinese proverb goes, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. It's never too late to invest. It's never too late to get in. I'll tell you about a gentleman that I'm working with at my employment, and I won't name names. I'm a very big fan of confidentiality, but this gentleman is a few years older than I am, and I'll be 43 shortly. He's a few years older than I am, and he just bought his first rental property. And, you would think, well, I mean, you're in your 40s, like, how many years do you want this thing to appreciate? But his plan is, look, I just bought this. I'm going to hang on to it for 10 years. I'm going to let it appreciate. I'm going to sell it. And then that's going to be my retirement plan, right? So whether you are 25 and looking to do your first investment, or 50 and looking for something that'll help make life a little bit easier at 60 or 65. There's no better time to plant that tree than right now. I firmly believe that. You can watch the news and they can talk about the housing crisis this and housing prices that. I'm not an economist, so I want to be very clear, and I'll caveat that. I'm not an economist. I'm not a mortgage expert. I'm not a demographer. But I do enough reading. I do enough research, and I stay in contact with people like you, Erwin, and I, going to your events and learning from experts like yourself. I know enough that says that there's so many factors that are pro-housing right now that there's no such thing as timing. I think market timing is the most ridiculous thing you can do. Okay. And let me walk through these, and I'd love your thoughts on them. Mm-hmm. Number one is in the GTA, you have the green belt. Sorry to say, there's one of two directions that housing is going to go: infill, and it's going to go up. So we're talking smaller units and we're talking condominiums, but there's no more land that's being released in order to allow these big single family houses to go up in anymore. Right. So that means that people have to make the choice. They're either going to live in a condominium, which, by the way, those have shot up in price, or they're going to pay a hefty premium to live in a house, right? Because they want the freedom of a backyard and all that other great stuff. Number one. Number two, we continue to invite immigrants from all over the world to come and enjoy the privileges of living in such a wonderful country in Canada. And a huge swath of those immigrants are coming to the Greater Toronto area for jobs. Right. There's no question about that, right? Number three, the GTA holistically is becoming much more interconnected. As much as we complain about transit and whatnot, a great example of this is Welland and St. Catharines. I am blown away by the housing price increases in Welland and St. Catharines. You just have the GO train. I think it was maybe 6 months to a year ago. You're finally getting daily GO train running to St. Catharines to Union Station. This means that you can buy a house or rent a place in St. Catharines and work in downtown Toronto. Now, hey, listen, if you're willing to do 4 hours a day on the GO train, you're a much, much stronger and better person than I am. But the point is that is a reality now, that people are living in St. Catharines and commuting to downtown Toronto via GO train. And you're seeing the housing prices go up in these places like Welland and St. Catharines and Thorold and Niagara-on-the-Lake and Niagara Falls, right? So
also the east and the north, Oshawa, Barrie. Yeah.
Oshawa, Barrie. Full disclosure, I don't know much about those areas, given that all my investing is sort of in the Hamilton and Welland areas. Mm-hmm. But rates are low. Okay. And there's no rate increases on the horizon, and there's no justification for increases in rates. Again, I want to be very clear. I'm not an economist. I'm not Mark Carney, God bless him. But, in the US, Trump has basically kiboshed rate increases, which means that we're going to follow in Canada, right?
He's actually demanding a significant cut, but
yeah.
And more quantitative easing, but yeah.
Right.
Go on.
So unemployment is low. So you've got the demographic factors. You've got the greenbelt factors. You've got increased transportation and people willing to live farther out in places like St. Catharines and Welland and commuting to work. And you've got continued immigration. So
don't forget inflation. Labor costs are going up, like we talked about.
Exactly.
Material costs are going up.
Material costs are going up. Cost of living is going up. And here's the other thing, Erwin, that people need to reconcile. So maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, when you were buying a house, who are you competing against? In Toronto, you were competing against other Torontonians, right? You were competing against new immigrants who were coming from places like Greece and Italy and Portugal who didn't have two dimes to rub together. But now in Toronto, who are you competing against in the GTA? You're competing against wealthy Middle Easterns. You're competing against wealthy Chinese, wealthy people from Hong Kong, wealthy people from Russia who are looking to park their money. And I'm not saying that, it's not right or it's not wrong. But it is what it is.
Oh, you forgot about the wealthy people from the GTA too.
And of course, the wealthy people from the GTA, right?
Who are buying for the condos for the kids.
Right. Who are buying condos for the kids or whatever it is. So the reality is we want to live in a world-class city and a world-class, and by virtue of that, the environs around that world-class city, because Toronto is, for more, let's be honest, it is the hub of the GTA, and everything else around kind of benefits from Toronto, more or less. And yet, when we're excited about living in a world-class city, we complain about having world-class city problems. Look at Toronto where we are today. You could still, in the GTA, afford a house. Okay? You may have to sacrifice or whatever it is. Try doing that in New York City.
Yeah.
Who owns a house in New York City, right? Who owns a house in Paris? Who owns a house in London? Who owns a house in Hong Kong, in Singapore, Shanghai, Beijing, right?
Any city the size with the population of ours.
Yeah. So, if you have the means today to get into the rental market, if you have the means today to buy a property, there's no better time to plant that tree than now. So and it may not be downtown Toronto, it may not be in Leaside, but hey, Hamilton, hey, St. Catharines, hey, Thorold, hey, Stony Creek, Grimsby. There's a lot of opportunities out there, man. It's a matter of just getting over that first hump, right? There's a million reasons why you shouldn't do something in your mind. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you that, the biggest reason why you should is that you're going to look back 10 years ago and say, wow, I can't believe that I passed up on 10 years of increases in mortgage pay downs because I was trying to time the market.
Mm-hmm. Here's the other thing I've been telling people as well. You don't necessarily have to live further. Why not co-living? I was bitching at two of my cousins on the weekend.
Yeah.
Or maybe the weekend before. One of them just bought a semi, 1.3 million in northeast Markham, like far, like well away from any highway. So I was telling him, why don't you just, with your brother, pay like $1.8-2 million for a house at like Yonge and Eglinton.
Yeah.
And then you can get like a fair sized house for that kind of money.
Absolutely.
And then, you could probably get a 4-bedroom house and then just share it.
Yeah.
Now you both live way closer to work and you're saving money.
Absolutely.
They think I'm nuts.
It makes, but see, here's the thing, right? People are still thinking about accommodations and thinking about habitation the way that they thought about it 20 or 30 years ago. That's not the reality anymore, right? And, there are young families who are raising children in condominiums. There are people who are, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who have roommates, right? I have a friend of mine, my best friend from when I was a young man, who recently relocated to Hamilton from Ajax. And who worked with somebody on your team, Erwin, to buy his first house in Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And he bought it in the Crown Point neighborhood in downtown Hamilton, just off of Ottawa Street. And his plan is it's a great area. I was blown away. We'll talk about that in a second. I was blown away by that neighborhood. But he bought the house and he's having it renovated. But his idea is that he's going to have someone living in the basement. And this is a single guy. He's got a good job, and he's recognized that why should I carry the mortgage on by myself when there's a demand for rentals in the city? Crown Point neighborhood. Can we talk about that for a bit?
Absolutely.
I love that area.
I saw on your Instagram you were just there.
Yeah.
Was Erwin there too?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't there with me. That was I took a Friday off to go to spend some time with my wife for Easter, and I'm shocked by what's going on with the Crown Point neighborhood. Ottawa Street is great.
It's hot.
A lot of cool restaurants, a lot of cool things. There's you've got the original Tim Hortons there, which is always a blast to go to, right? I mean, you've got
and our friend Diane has her house across the street. Did you know that?
Diane,
our mutual friend Greek Diane. Privacy reasons, we won't say her last name.
Right? Yeah. No, I didn't know that.
Her house is directly across the street.
I did not know that. But my buddy just bought a place on East, so I can't remember the name of the street, but just like 2 blocks west of Ottawa. Great neighborhood. Like I would say, Erwin, if anybody's listening to this podcast and they're looking for a neighborhood that's up and coming, but still very much affordable to get into, check out Crown Point. If you drive down Ottawa Street, I recommend you go along, is it King or is it Main? I always forget at that point if it's King or Main. And then you kind of go north.
They merge about that point.
Yeah, they merge somewhere around that point. You've got Caro, which is a great restaurant at the corner.
I was there on Friday.
Yeah. It's called Caro, right? C-A-R-O? Yeah. I think that means deer, like not the animal, but like my deer in Italian. Caro, mi caro. I don't know. I'm not Italian. You've got Hammerheads, which is an incredible fish and chips place. One of the best fish and chips places I've ever been to. There's the original Tim Hortons. There's a Hamburger, which is like a restaurant that's also on King William. You've got Momentum Fitness. You've got a plethora of businesses that are coming into that area. And that's, when you think about the Torontonians who are moving into Hamilton, that's where they're going, right? That's the up and coming neighborhood that I'm excited about. So definitely something worth checking out. And I think a lot of opportunities there. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're looking to make your play in Hamilton, that's not a bad place to start looking at.
In the Cannon, wonderful coffee shop, wonderful bakery.
I haven't tried that yet. I'm going to have to head down there.
Excellent. I remember I had a savory crepe there. It was excellent.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing about Hamilton, and I feel like I just can't get enough about talking about how much I love that city, right? I mean, you and I live in Burlington because I mean, for me, working in Mississauga, it's not easy getting in and out of Hamilton in the morning, but every opportunity I have to get out to the Hammer, I'm constantly impressed by the rate of change, the improvements, the new businesses, the changing demographics. It is such a hidden gem that I love when someone hasn't been there before, or maybe doesn't necessarily remember having been there, and then you get the opportunity to take them out there. I have yet to see someone not completely blown away by what's happened to that city over the last 10 or 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Especially if they've been there before, especially if they're a Mac student, and then their mind's completely blown.
Yeah.
Now, also before we start recording, you said some controversial things because do you still teach
part-time?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I was teaching part-time up until the end of this last semester. I don't teach over the summer semester simply because there's no demand for part-time teachers. And in the fall, the semester begins September 1st. My second son is due August 31st. So I will probably take that semester off as I'm helping my wife transition into mommyhood.
So we have a lot of young people that listen to this show.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Oh my goodness. So I remember when I was about 22 or 23 years old, I was working in a grocery store. And there was this guy, Jim, who was a real estate agent at the time. He goes, Johnny, let's go buy a house together. Let's buy a house. This was in, I got to say, maybe 1998, 1999, something like that, right?
Good time to buy.
Because I graduated university in 2000. I think I was 23 or 24 that year. So it's got to be 99, 2000, let's say, right? And I was half joking, half serious when I said, man, if I could go back in time, I would have told myself, buy that house at 22, buy that house at 23, and just hang on to it. And I didn't buy my first rental property till I was 35. Okay. I did my MBA. I'm a CPA, CMA. I've got 2 degrees, yippity yap. I wonder.
So you spent a lot of money to do it.
I spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort.
In your prime of your life, yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of wonder, what would have happened if I just bought a bunch of houses? I don't know, right? You can't say regret. You can't go back in a time machine. But what I can do is I can tell people here, plant that tree, plant it today, whether you're 22, 32, 42, 52, 62, right? Sure, if you're 22, you've got a much longer time frame, right? And that's great. If you're 62, maybe you've got 10 years of investment and then you want to cash out and then travel the world or whatever. Mm-hmm. But formal education is important, and I value that.
For certain subjects.
But informal education, the stuff that I learned by attending your events over the years, by reading books by Don Campbell, mm-hmm. by doing my own research, by attending the various Rain and Rockstar and various events over the years, that stuff has been invaluable.
Right.
So
more than ever, there's been fantastic education available outside of formal education. Mm-hmm. And I'll add to like digital marketer, anything that comes out of Dan Kennedy, anything that comes out of Russell Brunson right now, my own personal coach, who maybe people would think is expensive, but pales in comparison to what tuition costs these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah, continue on.
Well, no, I think if you look at the story holistically, and that is that you've got great demographics, you've got low rates, you've got continued immigration, and you've got an interconnected city that people want to live in.
Mm-hmm. You have inflation. You have all these factors that are there. Mm-hmm. If you are looking to get into the rental market now, either as a landlord buying a property or as somebody who wants to buy a house and rent out a basement or a room or whatever it is, there is no better time than now. I promise you will look back 10 years from now and say, damn it, if only I did that, here's how much further I would have been, right? I'll give you one other example that's not related to real estate. I think this is the third time you and I have had this podcast, and it's not a secret that I also invest in stocks, right? Mm-hmm. No, I actually enjoy that you talk about stocks in the show.
Yeah, it's because I don't think of myself as solely a landlord or solely as a real estate investor. I do think of myself as an investor and a business person holistically. I work for a wonderful privately held corporation that I'm very proud to work at. I've been investing in stocks since I was 19, so for over half my life. I've been in real estate for 8 years. There's a lot of things that I've got my fingers in a bunch of different slices of the pie. And here is an example of Canadian National Railway. And again, I will caveat, I do not consider this a recommendation to buy. I'm not a professional stock broker. I'm not a trader.
Right.
I'm just a guy.
Yeah, I'm not professional.
Not a professional.
I have no advice to give here.
Do not consider this a piece of advice. It's simply a story that says Canadian National Railway. I have bought this stock in increments since it was probably $30 or $40 a share. I think it closed probably about $124, $125 a share today. Did I buy it at $100 a share again? Yep. Did I buy it at $119 a share again? Yep. Right? Because when there's something good and all the facts and all the stats say that there will continue to be increases in the value of that, whether it's the housing market, whether it's a strong stock, whether it's a business, then plant that tree, right? Plant that tree. Yeah, would it have been better to have bought Canadian National Railway when it was $20 a share instead of $120? Yeah, sure. Unless you've invented a time machine, which, by the way, if you have, let me know as quickly as possible. Unless you've invented a time machine, there is literally nothing you can do other than to make the decision that says, I'm in now and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to hold on and I'm going to ride this out and I'm going to make a lot of money, right? That's my perspective, my friend. Like, plant that tree. That is all I can say. If I can give one piece of advice, and I think, and it's the same, if you go back and listen to the last podcast and you go back and listen to the one that preceded that, it's always the same advice. It's pull the damn trigger. When was the last time you and it was the first podcast? How many years ago was that? Must have been a couple years ago, right?
Okay. 2017.
Let's call it 2 years ago. How much have houses gone up since 2017 when I was saying the same thing, pull the trigger in 2017?
Depending on when, because 2017 would have been around the fair housing plan. So we would have peaked, and we've actually gone past that peak already.
We would have gone past
for the stuff that we buy.
The stuff that we buy, City of Hamilton, St. Catharines,
Starter home.
Welland.
Starter home category.
Absolutely. But I can tell you that all those areas have done very, very well, right? Yeah. And even they
were fully, and rental demand was always high.
And even if all you did was pay down your mortgage over that time frame, you're way better off than you would have been putting your money in like a money market fund or whatever it is, right? GIC. That stuff's a joke.
A bond.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
how do you beat it? We're talking about, like, you mentioned, like, these weren't your words, but somewhere around like holistic investing. I don't care what it is. I'll invest if it makes sense.
Absolutely.
So and I was talking to my previous guest, for us, real estate's our benchmark. We'll invest in something else if it makes more sense. If it beats this benchmark.
Absolutely, right? I mean, when it comes to stocks, a lot of my stocks are quite transparently held in my RRSPs, and they have their purpose. And I look at the world and I say, there's a lot of smart people in corporate Canada, and there's a lot of smart people in corporate America. So, they've done some really good things, and I've made some great money, and I love getting those dividends. But just get out there and plant the tree, Rowan. That's the only thing I can say. Just get out there and plant that tree, right?
Say your son's 18. Fast forward, just put him in a time machine.
16 years.
Shows up today. He's 18 years old. John, I want to be a CA. Yeah. I'm 18 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at like 5-6 years university.
Yeah.
Or should just buy a house.
Well, here's the thing. When I was that age, I didn't have the luxury of picking one or the other, right? I came from a very modest, blue-collar, hardworking, good family. And what I would say to my son is, I mean, how do you figure out how you do both? Like, it's one of the things that kind of tears at me, because education is important, right? I mean, all sorts of education. It's good to get business education, to understand finances and whatnot, right? What I would challenge my son and what I want to do with him is I actually want to get him involved in my business pretty early on, understanding the concept of, collecting cash. Money goes out, right? Money comes in. You've got expenses. You've got mortgage. You've got bills. So if I can at least pass on those lessons to him, I don't want to think of the world, Erwin, as just dichotomous, where it's you can go to school or you can buy that rental property.
Yes.
Hopefully, I'll be able to give my children a different life where they can perhaps do both. And for me, it's actually kind of interesting, and maybe we can shift gears for a few minutes here. I came from a very modest background, and I think that a lot of the reason why I have such a drive for investing in business is because, I saw the struggles my father faced. I saw the struggles my mother faced working part-time jobs, working in industries that dried up. And, 1 minute you're making $50,000 a year in the 80s. The next thing you're working at minimum wage in a grocery store because you got to pay the mortgage, right? I saw my family go through that. And, how do you keep your kids hungry when they've never known fear or hunger themselves, right? And I look at you as a great example of someone who I think came from a fairly middle class or upper middle class family, right?
Yeah.
And
my dad's a doctor. So.
Yeah, your dad's a doctor, right?
Yeah.
So your dad did a great job, and I would say your parents did a great job in instilling the values in you that said, you got to work for a living, no matter what your dad and your mom did. You got to be hungry. You need to earn that dollar, right? So there's a book that I read recently called The Millionaire Next Door. Great book. Basically talks about that conundrum where most millionaires are people who came from nothing because they're the ones who understand the value of hard work, the value of earning a dollar, and the value of investing and living modestly. I would say for me, it's more important rather than asking my son to make a decision about going to school versus investing. I want to instill in him and my other son that's going to be born in a few months, the values of staying hungry, of understanding the value of a dollar, and then and understanding that money doesn't just materialize out of thin air, that you have to earn it, right? Whether it's investing or hard work or whatever it is. But that's really the lesson that I want to impart on them.
So one thing I can ask you that I can't ask other guests, how would you bring your kids on board with what you do with stocks? How would you ease them along? This is actually good research for me because I'm writing for my book.
Well, I mean, I knew nothing about the stock market.
Until how old?
Probably about 18, 19.
Yeah.
And the only reason I learned is because there was a guy when I was working at Loblaws in the grocery store, a guy who worked in the deli department who was talking to me about it. And I will give credit where my credit is due. And there's two people that I want to give credit to for helping me learn about the world of money and finance. And that's my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother, my mother's mom, very naturally savvy businesswoman. She pushed my grandfather to buy land. She made a lot of great decisions. She pushed my family and I give her a lot of credit. She was the one who used to say to me as a kid, John, no marriage until education first. Invest your money, save your money. And then my mother was also the same way. One of the things I'll remember, I'm 43 and I had my first part-time job when I was 15. My mom said, okay, you're making $6.50 an hour. You work 4 hours a week. That's, call it $25 or $24, whatever, $25, $26 or whatever it is, right? I got a little bit of beer in me. I can't do math right now. And she said, how much money does a kid your age need? You're going to keep $10 in your pocket to buy your French fries or whatever it is at school. The rest of that money is going in the bank. And then as you work more hours and you get raises, you're going to continue to put more and more money in the bank, right? So she drove that in me and this idea that you earn, but most of that has to be put away and invested. So what I would do with my kid is...
Sorry, when you made more, were you able to keep more for spending or that you held the $10?
Well, look, if you're making 25, it'd be like save 10, invest 15. If you're making 50, it might be save 15 or 20, invest, $30, $35, right? But I got really good at saving money. I think that by age 20, I had a net worth of like $10,000 or something stupid like that, which
that's huge for a 20-year-old.
Yeah, and think about that. That was 23 years ago. I had a net worth of 10 grand, right? This is, and I paid for my own university. I paid for my own car. I paid for my own transportation. My parents, and while I was living at home, I paid rent to my parents voluntarily. This wasn't something that my parents asked of me, right?
I don't know if any of this is possible today.
I'm sorry?
I don't think any of this is possible today.
Well, I'd like to think that there's some good people out there doing, I don't know. You're probably right.
Okay, hang on. What did you pay for tuition? What's tuition today?
Oh, sorry. You're saying that paying for your own tuition is impossible. Oh, yeah. No. I don't disagree. It's tough for kids out there. I thought you meant kids who are paying rent to their parents for living at home.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a different story.
You
Yeah.
pay any amount. I don't care.
No, it's tough. Look, I was making $6.50 an hour in 1991. 1991, right?
Yeah.
When minimum wage was $4.50, I was making 50% more than minimum wage. Like, who today is starting a part-time job making 50% more than minimum wage? What's minimum wage now? It's like 14 bucks, right? So who's making $21 as a teenager, 15 years old? That's the equivalent of what I would have been making back in the day. Right. So, yeah, I mean,
and tuition was considerably less than today.
And tuition would have been considerably less. I think even when you factor in inflation and minimum wage and all that, yeah, I mean, it's harder these days, right? Regardless, what I would do with my kids is I would, definitely get them involved and get them to understand the way that the world of finances works. I think that the problem, Erwin, is that you come from a certain standard of living which is low and difficult, and what you want to do is you want to try to protect your children from those same hardships. And that's the mistake, right? I want my kids not to think that, oh my God, daddy can't pay the mortgage, or oh my God, we're not going to have groceries tomorrow. But I want my kids to understand that if they want a car, get a part-time job, right? I want my kids to know that even though I've already started saving for their university tuition or whatever it could be, whatever it is that they end up doing at that age, they may have to pay for their own books, or if, they may have to pay for their own meals. The idea that they understand the value of a dollar. And if you don't understand what it means to work for a dollar, to turn around to spend that dollar, then how can you ever appreciate what it means to watch your money grow, right? Like, the richest people in the world didn't get rich because they continue to improve their quality of life in pace or in lockstep with their income increases. Look at a guy like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is living in the same house that he's lived in for God knows how long, right? He never cared about fancy cars or fancy meals. Look at a guy like, even Steve Jobs. I don't think Steve Jobs was a fanciful guy, right? And, I think that people who love money and who love investing and who love it, they do it because they truly love it, and they've had the right people teach them about the importance of that, more so than saying, well, you know what, if I made $1,000 today, I'm going to buy $1,000 worth of crap. That's not for me. Right? It's just not who I am.
I also would say, like, people like Zuckerberg, Jobs, like Gates, they had a drive for something else.
Absolutely.
They didn't really care for the flash.
For those guys,
their mission was so much more bigger than what they wore, what car they drove.
Those guys, Erwin, the money came as a result of the passion, right? Think about it. Like, once you get past a certain income, or once you get past a certain net worth, I mean, look, let me put it as simple as this. Let's say you had $2 million in cash, okay? You can take that $2 million, go and put it in the stock market safely without even losing a night of sleep. Probably get 5.5% dividends, okay? You could make $110,000 in dividends and never have to work again, right? I mean, let's say you assume a relatively modest lifestyle. You never have to work again. Why do guys like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and Warren Buffett, why do they continue, in spite of being billionaires, continue to want to earn and continue to want to work and continue what they want to do? Because of passion. And I feel that way about investing in stocks. I feel that way about the real estate market. I feel that way about potential business opportunities, right? For me, and I think I said this to you on the last podcast, it's not about kind of hitting a certain financial threshold and saying, I'm out, I'm selling everything, and I'm just going to go and live on a yacht. That doesn't interest me. I actually genuinely love working. I love watching my net worth grow. I love watching my little empire continue to improve. It's just how I'm wired. And if I could do anything, coming back to what we were talking about earlier, whether it's become a CA or buy a house, I'd rather instill the right values that says, guys, no matter what path you take, spend less than what you earn, pay yourself first, invest, and remember that there's a lot of smart people out there. You should be making money off those smart people every single day while you sleep, whether it's real estate and someone's paying your mortgage, whether it's the stock market and someone's paying you a dividend that goes up every year faster than inflation, whether it's investing in a franchise, whether it's investing in second mortgages, whether it's investing in, with Graybrook in second, in property development. The fact is your money has to work for you. You cannot work for your money. That is a recipe for failure. That's what I would instill into my boys.
All right. And just to understand, for the listener's benefit, just understand, if you only want one property for investment properties, that is totally okay.
Listen, I mean,
better than nothing.
Like I said to you earlier, I've got a friend of mine, a friend and a coworker who said, "Listen, I want the one property. I want to rent it. I want to hold on to it for 10 years. I want to sell it. I want to retire off of it. And that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Man, listen, I mean, I've had, and I've had 28 Venue Lane for 8 years. First rental property I bought. It has gone up more than double. I think it's gone up 110 or 115% in value. If I sell that place, pay my real estate fees, pay my mortgage, pay my land transfer taxes, whatever. Not my land transfer taxes, I'm sorry, my capital gains. Yeah. Capital gains tax is what I meant to say. I mean, it's going to be a few $100,000 of cash. Okay. Sure. What can I do with that? Maybe I'll pay down my mortgage. Maybe buy a car,
boat,
whatever, a boat. It's there for me to do. I don't need to do it right now. I'm happily working. And for me, it's like the excitement and the part that I enjoy the most is watching it grow. So it's there, and as long as I don't need it. But if you're 50 years old and you're looking at retirement, like, man, I haven't prepared for this, and you've got a little bit of money that you can put into a rental property, get in there, get your 10, 15 years, sell that, and then do what you got to do with it, right? So that's it, man. That's what I got to say today. Yeah.
Unless, I'm sure there's a question I wanted to ask that I've forgotten.
What's that question you want to ask me that you've forgotten?
I've forgotten.
Here's a question. How is it that I'm still awake at this time? I usually go to bed at 9:30 and wake up at 5:30 every day.
Yeah, but when you speak, that gives you energy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does give me energy. I love these podcasts. And this is the 100th episode. Am I remembering that correctly?
You were part of the celebration process.
Very good.
Of 100 episodes.
Awesome.
I'm not sure where we're at right now. We're somewhere over 100.
That's awesome.
But it's one of the fun things I wanted to do is have back some of our most popular guests.
Yeah. No, this is my third time doing this, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, it wasn't. This is like low. This is like low value.
Okay, that's fine.
But last time you were talking about investing in Greece.
Yeah. I went down that route, and it was a bit of a gamble because the Greek market has just taken a complete slaughtering, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it didn't pay off.
But I thought the economy's doing well.
The economy, relative to its worst point, it's doing well. That's one where you got to be really patient and hang in there. It ended up not being a very good investment for me. I'll be very clear about that and very frank. It's once in a while, do I like to take a gamble?
Yeah. With
a small amount of money?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? If it pays off, great. If it doesn't pay off, take your lumps and move on. I got to tell you, during that time frame, Enbridge, Canadian National Rail, Amazon.
This is not an endorsement, by the way.
It's not an endorsement, but I'm just saying, right? Like, stick to your fundamentals. Companies that continue to do very well, that have solid business models, that are lower risk, that pay good dividends.
Yeah.
Real estate, again, plant that tree, right? Yeah. Again, not a professional stockbroker. I'm not a trader. I don't have a CFA. I'm not going to give you financial advice. Neither are you. But again, I've had the winners that have been winners for the last 20 years, and real estate is one of those.
Right.
So,
because in the report I'm writing, which will be part of my book as well, is I actually would suggest that, again, I'm not a financial advisor.
You're not a financial advisor.
But what I would do with my own kid, I want them to choose a blue chipper, and I want them to choose anything they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would actually push them towards, not push them, I don't know, maybe 2 more stocks. But I would want one of those choices to be something they're familiar with.
Yep.
That I would consider risky. Like, say, like a Snapchat, right?
Yeah.
Something that didn't have great fun, like from the outside looking in, again, I'm no pro.
Yeah.
I didn't think it looked strong, but I would actually like my kid to lose money in the stock market.
Yeah. But that's a good lesson, right? Because
I want their money. I want them flipping burgers at McDonald's and see that money turn to like nothing.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. You're working a shitty job.
Yeah.
You're sweating to make that like minimum wage.
Yep.
And then you put that money in the market and watch it go down and realize all that work you did was for naught.
Yeah.
But that's an important lesson, right? Because if you can create that iron stomach when they're young, then it'll help them to learn later on when they actually have good investments versus kind of a flash in the pan. Once they have good investments, that there's ups and downs, right? Look at 2008. I'll leave you off on this story because I have to head home soon. But there was a guy that I did my MBA with. And 2008 hit, and you remember what that was. It was a complete disaster for stocks. I think the Dow fell 50% or something.
Worst recession since the Great Depression. Yep.
Exactly. This guy, he mortgaged his house, took everything and dumped it into the stock market in 2008. And he would wake up every morning, go to the washroom, and vomit because he was so completely, his nerves were completely destroyed. He would go and puke because of how nervous he was and how terrified he was. What's happened to the stock market since 2008? It has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Okay. If you go back and look at 2008 on a graph, it looks like a little tiny little dip. It doesn't look like the monster of monstrosities, end of the world that everyone was calling back in that day. So,
that's the media's job. But yeah,
that's the media's job. But you have to understand, and I'll leave you on this, Rowan, is that this isn't a linear journey. It's not, I'm starting at point A and I am headed towards 100 feet high and it's going to be a linear journey. You know what you're going to face on the way is you're going to start from point A, you're going to go up a little bit, then you're going to hit a bit of a crevice. You fall into the crevice, you crawl out, then you continue to go up. And then a boulder comes rolling down you and you kind of dodge out of the way, but it nicks your foot and you kind of break your toe and you got to hobble a little bit up that hill. And then you get to a point where you've got barbed wire. Like, what do I do? Do I go around it? Do I throw a blanket on top and try to climb over? But success is not a linear path, right? And if you treat your children and if you teach them that success is a linear path, then what happens when they face adversity? They're going to struggle. So teaching and encouraging adversity, whether it's, you got to work a shitty job at McDonald's, which, by the way, fantastically run company. I have all the respect in the world for them. Or, you go and get them to put their money in the stock market and watch it get massacred when they're relatively young. Like,
and it's a small amount.
Yeah, a small amount. Here's your college investment. Do what you want with it. But teaching your kids about adversity and letting them learn that they can recover from it is the greatest of all lessons that you can possibly teach them. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to watching my kids fail and getting up again and continuing to succeed after that, right?
Wait, did your friend puking in the toilet, did he hang on?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's very rich right now. Yeah. He hung on. He made a ton of money. Lots of money.
Good for him.
Yeah. Hey, listen, everyone was running. He saw that and he goes, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. You and I could live another 40 years and never see anything like that again.
I know, but oh man, that hurts my stomach to mortgage your own home. Like, mortgage your investment property and dump that money in the stock market. He
was a guy, he must have been 30 years old at the time. He was a young guy.
Stones. Good on him.
Iron belly.
Awesome. Thanks, John, for doing this.
Hey, listen, you don't have to thank me. It's always my pleasure. And as always, I'll do the plug for your own. You and I have worked together for 7 or 8 years and bought
8 years.
8 years. I've bought every one of my rental properties either through you or someone on your team, including
your home
and my personal home, and
which you weren't even there for.
Just
me FaceTiming your wife.
You and my wife bought the home, and you FaceTimed me, and I said, yeah, if my wife's happy with it, then I'm happy with it. I continue to, I've sent your team two different customers over the last year and a half or so.
That was more.
I think it was 2 over the last year and a half. So yeah, if you're listening out there and you're looking for someone that you want to work with, again, I'll leave you with a couple pieces of advice. Number 1, plant the tree today, right? You could have planted it 20 years ago, but you didn't. Plant it today. And number 2, I always recommend working with Erwin and team. So yeah, that's it, my friend. It's been a pleasure, and I think I'm going to go home and sleep.
All right, awesome. I'll have more beer for next time. Thanks, John.
Have a good night.
Are you local to the Greater Toronto Hamilton area? Are you interested in becoming a real estate investor, earning extra income in your sleep without getting calls from tenants or unplugging toilets? Then please join us live and in person at the Halton Real Estate Investors Group meetings at the prestigious Sheridan College in Oakville, Ontario. Our meetings are catered to both seasoned and novice investors to share and educate the fundamentals and truths about real estate investing so you too can earn 7-figure net worth like our clients and guests of the show. How great it would be to be financially free, to take more time off with your family, retire earlier and more comfortably, or to support your favorite charity. If this is of interest to you, then get on the invite list at www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca/meeting. The host of the meeting is yours truly, Erwin Cito. That's me, aka 4-time winner of the Real Estate Agent of the Year to investors for the years 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. Results are not guaranteed, but our investor clients who've been with us since 2012 are earning over 400% returns on cash flowing investment property. So come check us out as soon as you can. Due to Ontario Fire Code regulations, we can only have so many attendees, and we have been waitlisted in the past, so don't wait to register at www.truthAboutRealEstateInvesting.ca/meeting. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed the show and would like to learn more about real estate investing, then you do not want to miss my top 10 tips on real estate report. It is free to download. I've interviewed many of the leading authorities in real estate, including best-selling authors Julie Broad, Don R. Campbell, Russell Westcott, and Tom Karadza. My superstar investor guests include folks who acquire 2 properties per month quite regularly or transacted on over 100 properties personally. I learned a thing or two in my own investing and distilled it all down to you into 10 you cannot ignore tips if you want to be a successful investor. To download the report, go to www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca/book. Again, that's www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca/book. Again, it's free, and go on, be awesome, because I believe in you.